Welcome to The Explainer. So today, we're going to dig into a really wild moment. A time when a U.S. president's bid to buy Greenland almost tore the Western alliance apart. We'll explore how what seemed like a strange real estate deal just exploded into an international crisis that pushed allies right to the brink.
I mean, it is not every day you hear language like this, especially not in the halls of the European Parliament, and aimed squarely at a sitting U.S. president. This wasn't some whispered comment either. It was a public declaration, right in the middle of a formal debate. And yeah, it went viral for a reason.
But look, that kind of outburst doesn't just come out of nowhere, right? It wasn't some random flash of anger. It was really a symptom of much deeper cracks forming in the alliance. It signaled a level of frustration that, honestly, you almost never see in modern diplomacy. So let's unpack how we even got here.
Okay, so our story really kicks off in the European Parliament. You've got this Danish MP, Anders Vistisen, and he is not holding back at all. He's directly confronting President Trump's foreign policy. And the words he chose, well, they were deliberately shocking. He wanted to send a message that was impossible to ignore, in what he called a language you can understand.
So what exactly was the immediate spark that lit this whole diplomatic fire? Well, it was President Trump's repeated and very public interest in purchasing Greenland from Denmark. And this wasn't just a passing thought, It became this persistent point of tension that just wouldn't go away.
Denmark's response? It was swift and it was crystal clear. They weren't just saying no, they were making a point to emphasize their deep historical and sovereign connection to the territory. To them, the offer wasn't just absurd, it was a flat-out insult to their 800-year history with Greenland.
Now, the official reasoning coming out of the U.S. administration framed the whole thing very differently. They presented it not as some simple land deal, but as a preemptive strategic move. The argument was basically that by controlling Greenland, the U.S. could block rivals like China and Russia from getting a strategic foothold in the Arctic, which is, becoming more and more critical.
But this confrontation was never just about real estate. To really get why Europe was so frustrated, you have to look at the very cornerstone of transatlantic security, NATO. This whole Greenland issue became deeply tangled with these growing fears about America's commitment to the alliance itself.
Some analysts started to suggest that President Trump was beginning to see NATO's collective defense pact, that promise that an attack on one is an attack on all, as the only real thing that could actually block an aggressive move on Greenland. Because if Denmark is a NATO ally, the U.S. can't just take its territory, right?
And this slide really captures a stunning shift in focus. Right before a big meeting at the World Economic Forum, President Trump posted on social media that China and Russia were just bogeys. Basically, fake threats meant to distract everyone, and that the actual threat was NATO itself.
And this wasn't just rhetoric. Actions followed. Reports started to emerge about a plan to pull U.S. troops from around 200 key NATO positions. Now, you can imagine how that looked to European leaders. To them, it felt like a deliberate act to weaken the alliance from the inside, leaving them all feeling a whole lot more vulnerable. So, the pressure wasn't just military and diplomatic, it became economic too. The administration essentially opened up a second front in this conflict, hitting European allies right where it hurts, their economies.
What happened was, President Trump imposed a pretty significant 25% tariff on 8 European nations. And crucially, the administration was very explicit that this was for political leverage. So it completely transformed trade policy from a tool for negotiation into an outright weapon. So in response to all this, European leaders, particularly France's Emmanuel Macron, decided it was time to stop absorbing the pressure and to start pushing back. They began to put together a plan to deploy a powerful economic countermeasure of their very own. They called for the activation of something called the Anti-Coercion Instrument, or ACI. You can really think of this as the EU's economic self-defense toolkit. It was specifically designed to protect member states from the exact kind of economic blackmail they felt they were facing.
And the process is actually pretty clever. It's a structured, escalating response. First, it starts with a formal diplomatic warning, a shot across the bow. But if that gets ignored, the EU can hit back hard with its own counter-tariffs, restrict services, and even limit foreign investment from that country.
So the crucial point here is this. Europe is no longer just absorbing pressure. With tools like the ACI, it's signaling a brand new willingness to push back with powerful economic weapons of its own. And that creates this incredibly tense standoff with its most important ally.
And that leaves us with the critical question for the future of this historic alliance. I mean, does fighting fire with fire actually work in geopolitics? Or does it just risk burning the whole house down? It's an unbelievably high-stakes gamble that could redefine the relationship between America and Europe for decades to come.